Hello, everyone. This is Father Michael Tischel.
And I am Stratis Papageorgiou.
And this is an Imperfect Podcast.
This is an Imperfect Podcast.
Imperfect. Cue music.
Try to make it different.
That was good. I like that. That was a nice touch. Oh man. Well, how you been, Strati?
Oh, not so bad. I've been
Yeah?
run ragged the past few weeks.
Yeah. Why would that be the case?
It's something about being in Serbia.
Being in Serbia.
Something
Wow.
about being in Serbia. And if anybody could see me now, they would see a wild man.
As I said prior to the podcast, you look a little bit like Kramer from
I do
Seinfeld
look
at the
a little
moment.
like Kramer. I'm not going to do the Kramer seizure.
Well, you did it. You did it, and I was
did do
was
it.
shocked by how much it sounded like Kramer. It looked like Kramer.
Looked like Kramer, yeah. No, if I did it now, nobody would see it except you, and it just
Well,
wouldn't be.
sometimes that's even better, right? Only when only
That's
I
true.
get to see it.
Right, because I don't want other people to see it.
That's right. That's right.
Right.
Everybody else is excluded.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
You're all excluded. Sorry.
And what kind of shirt are you wearing today? Do you have anything exciting on your
I
shirt?
do. I'm wearing a St. George shirt.
Nice.
Shout out to my to the community in Newport Richey, Florida. St. George.
Okay. All right. That's from your days in Newport Richey.
I mean, I was wearing this shirt when I was 14, and it fits perfectly. So
Hey, why not?
all that says about me is that I haven't grown at all.
Well, it's actually would have been the opposite for me, because when I was 14, I was a fairly substantial 14-year-old, and so I think I've actually done the opposite of growing. No, like waistline wise, like
no, but I'm talking about height.
Height wise, I was probably a little shorter than I am now.
Yeah,
but I could probably have probably reduced a few shirt sizes from then.
Yeah. I'm probably just a bit taller, like inches, just a couple, maybe.
Nice.
Anyway.
So today happens to be the feast of the ancestors of God, Joachim and Anna.
Indeed.
And it's the day after the nativity of the Theotokos. So it's always the feast day of Saints Joachim and Anna, her parents. And we thought maybe we could just chat a little bit about their lives, and I think specifically in relation to that whole dynamic of their inability to conceive and their barrenness, and how that related to their faith and their hope, especially in sort of God's intervention very late on in their life. So, Strati, you were going to just share a few words about their life just to kick us off, and then we were going to kind of just comment on the life and the feast and any insights from that.
Yeah. So Joachim, the son of Barpathir,
Sounds good.
was the son of the tribe of Judah, a descendant of King David. And God revealed to him that the Savior of the world would be born of his seed. Saint Anna was the daughter of Mathan, the priest, who was of the tribe of Levi, which of course he was, because that's the tribe of priests, right?
Yeah. Levitical.
Yeah. So, and she came from Bethlehem. The couple lived in Nazareth in Galilee. They were childless into their old age. And all their life they grieved over this. They had endured derision and scorn. Essentially, being a Hebrew and being childless was seen as like they did something wrong,
right.
like God was sort of punishing them for something they did bad. So then one day Joachim went to go to the temple to offer sacrifice, and when he was there, this priest who I didn't even know that we knew, Reuben, he considered it a disgrace that this man was childless, and so he he threw him out. Joachim went to a cave, which is believed there's actually a monastery now, an Orthodox monastery, where Elijah actually sat and received. He ate from ravens, or at some point Elijah was there, and then Anna also found out, and she found out about that, and she was grieved. And an angel appeared to them and told them, you're going to give birth. Mm-hmm. And immediately they went and met each other and embraced, and lo and behold, 9 months or something later, Anna gives birth. They give up the child to the temple. Oh yeah, that was the part of the agreement, that they would give the child to the temple, mm-hmm. To be raised in the temple, which, yeah. And so that's pretty much the rundown.
Yeah, thank you. And one of the primary sources for that we use, and that the church has used for their life, is the Proto-Evangelion of James.
I think you're right.
It's like a second century text.
So is it like apocryphal?
It is. Yeah. It's apocryphal. I think, from my understanding, some of the earliest church fathers didn't necessarily talk about it too frequently, but it wasn't until sort of later on, in like the later centuries of the church, that it became incorporated into some of the patristic writers, and also our liturgical texts. But I mean, it's beautiful in the sense that it kind of really lays out the agony of Joachim and Anna in their childlessness, and in the stigma that was associated with that, as you were mentioning, by the Jewish people. And I think a lot of that was related to the kind of expectation of a Messiah, and the kind of hope that you would be, that if you had a child, especially a male child, that there was the possibility that that child would be the Messiah.
Right. That was why people wanted male children.
Yeah, the one from kind of like from that prophecy from Isaiah that actually we heard about this morning in the epistle reading for today, about how the children of the flesh or the children of the promise would be more than the children of the flesh. Mm-hmm. So like those people who came from this lineage of barrenness, essentially, like Abraham and Sarah, and like all these different people that weren't able to conceive lawfully, and then finally were, that those children were much greater than the people who were able to conceive just by normal means, or when like Abraham was able to conceive with Hagar versus Sarah. So here it is from Isaiah. Rejoice, O barren one who does not bear. Break forth and shout, you who are not in travail, for the children of the desolate one are many more than the children of her that is married. So just that notion of, so it's like, well, that doesn't make sense. Like the children of the desolate one are many more than her that is married,
think about that, especially in the case of Abraham, like mm-hmm. from him sprouts an entire all of us, even
right. Eventually, the entire church. And it wasn't enough that he had a hard time having a child with Sarah initially. Once God did grant him his child, he tested him by telling him to go kill his only child. And it's like, okay, this one child that I gave you, that's going to be, the gateway to being the father of many nations, is now going to die. And so
did he tell him that? Did he tell him he'd be the gateway of many nations before?
I think, if I remember correctly, it was before, because it had to do with him being promised.
So I'm wondering if, like, when he was going to go sacrifice the son, he was like, wait a minute.
Yeah, I mean,
gateway to many nations.
Right. I mean, he was, and he had this kind of like this radical trust in God, in the faithfulness of God.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think it's just inconceivable. I mean, it's inconceivable.
Acts, you mean?
Yeah. Well, just the extent of his trust.
Mm.
You know what I mean? Like that he was, and there was something in the text about how his righteousness, his faith was accounted to him as righteousness because his righteousness, he was a righteous man because he walked closely with God. I don't remember exactly how, but there's just an indication that he was very close to God, and his closeness to God sort of produced this beautiful, trust, even when sort of seemingly reality was against God's faithfulness. So
right, yeah, I mean, and so if you think about it, there's a theme of barrenness producing, like you were just saying, and we see it in him, then we see it again in the new, so yeah, I wonder what that must have felt like for Joachim and Anna. I mean, I can't imagine. I mean, I guess I could, but I actually thought about it today, and the only thing I could think of was at least they had each other.
Mm-hmm.
She had him and he had her, and at the very least,
right.
It was the two of them in the world, but
even then, right, he goes and runs away to this cave,
right,
and kind of leaves her, and she's grieved because
right,
he's kind of abandoned her because he's ashamed and is praying, and
which
so it's like
yeah.
Well,
I find it interesting that this didn't happen. I mean, I don't doubt the story. I'm just saying, like, it's interesting that it didn't happen earlier. Like, nobody.
In their lives.
Yeah, like nobody. Maybe it did. Maybe it did, and then a nicer priest was like, "Okay, you can come," or
right.
Because I mean, he's like in his 70s. It said he died at the age of 80. So right. I mean, he was probably in his 70s at this point.
Yeah, and I've done a little bit of research. I think it's in the Proto-Evangelion of James that it wasn't a priest, but it was just a random person named Rahim, I think, who was the one who actually sort of like ridiculed him in the temple. But then then there's other accounts that claim that it's a priest. So whether it was a priest or not, I think what one thing is clear is that it seems like there was nothing necessarily to indicate that not having children according to the law would have kind of put you in disfavor with God.
Right. It was more like a cultural.
Exactly. Yeah. So, but the fact that and this is, I'm drawing from this really interesting book called Under the Laurel Tree, which is actually about kind of exploring the topic of infertility and barrenness, but alongside of the story of Joachim and Anna by an author named Nicole Rokas. She explores the Proto-Evangelion of James account. And I think one thing that's very clear is that, Joachim and Anna were very godly people. They were also very wealthy people, but they gave they kept a third of their fortune. They gave a third of it to the temple and a third of it to the poor.
Wow.
And so they were very righteous, very godly. And yet this one sort of moment of being ridiculed, just sort of like really tested them, and their kind of feeling of being sort of in disfavor with God. And I mean, in some ways it's kind of comforting to know that, that even people who are really righteous and holy are tested in a very intense way, and they're human, right? I mean, they right. it's through their agony that they show and they prove their faithfulness.
Yeah, and I mean, like and then you think about, what example of that do we see in like the modern saints like Paisios, and actually you do. I mean, there's no like great story necessarily about him like in agony, but he does talk about it when he's on Sinai. He says, for like, I don't remember how many days, it was like I was being crucified.
Right. I remember that.
You can only imagine that it's a similar it's a similar thing, that he's a human too, same base.
Sure.
And he's not some sort of a perfect being because, or I mean, he becomes, whatever he becomes later, holy, but like that process was arduous.
Yeah. It also reminds me of Saint Silouan and his
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
struggle, with pride and feeling abandoned by God, and even the word that came to him, "Keep your mind in hell and despair not," is very paradoxical in the sense that hell is the place that you're eternally condemned, right? It's like of all the hopeless places, hell is the hopeless, the most hopeless, and God tells him, sort of like, keep yourself in the most hopeless place and don't despair. And don't give up hope. It's like, like keep your like be barren, be fruitless, be like be in that place of total like a wasteland, but just that, and that's,
and it's a constant theme, isn't it? It's I think one thing that I noticed recently is that God isn't going to take away the sorrows, the difficulties, necessarily,
sure,
but rather he'll help you endure them, and
right.
he'll guide you through them, and he'll, and I think that's really, that's really helpful.
Yeah.
because it also doesn't break some sort of expectation you have. Oh, why would this happen to me? Well, okay, it does happen, and so but like you can be guided through it, you can be helped. And it reminds me of Porphyrios, who had cancer on his head, and
Oh yeah.
and he would so calmly describe how bad the pain was. I mean, okay, I say this and I'm nowhere near that level of being able to endure such pain, but regardless, he would describe it so calmly, so simply, so without giving any indication. But he would say that it's like putting a boiling oil in a pan and putting it on my head.
Yeah. Crazy.
Right. And he would say it with just serenity, like nothing's happened. So,
Yeah.
well, it is possible.
Yeah, it's possible. And I mean, I think that's the kind of like the beauty and the miraculous nature of our faith, that like God brings together these two extremes, like the extreme of extreme pain, extreme desolation becomes the doorway for, extreme joy
and one other thought, that it's not only someone like Saint Porphyrios who can do that. I remember listening to a lecture once by this a priest, a monk from Essex. I bet you know his name.
Okay.
I forget it right now.
Zacharias.
Probably.
Yeah.
Probably. And he was discussing some woman who was in the hospital, and he went in to see her, and she was so calm. And she was dying. She was so calm. She had been praying. And through her prayer, she was given consolation. So I mean, it's not just that; it can be just the average person as well.
Sure. Yeah.
That finds
that's important.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So yeah, that feeling of like, okay, God, God doesn't have to take away my suffering per se, right? The barrenness still exists. The agony still exists. The feeling of desolation, right? It's like, and yet somehow that is transformed into fruitfulness and into fertility, into
and only God can do that.
Right.
Yeah.
Death is no longer the end. It's the
right. Even death, right? Like, forget the worldly pains, but even death itself, which is the ultimate sort of end, quote unquote, is not the end. So
yeah,
that's really good.
Yeah. So Joachim and Anna are very hopeful figures for us.
Their story always inspired me. I think even as a child, I was always inspired by that story. I always thought, look at that, world that thinks that, somebody's cursed because of something. Look at that. God just, he spits in your face, like he totally turns the tables around, and
Yeah.
he changes the rules, and he
Yeah.
I was always inspired by that story.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I guess for us, like we just never know how or when God is going to act, and I think that's the important aspect, is it's like,
Yeah.
we're always being ready to be surprised, and it's hard. Like I'll be honest with you. Like, I mean, I go through experiences where it's just, I'm not a very strong person. I'm not a very resilient person, on a kind of, I don't have like the sort of hardcore old school mental toughness that I think, many people had in the past, or, and it's easy for me, in different circumstances to just kind of feel like I just kind of buckle under the, the weight of certain issues and certain things. And,
Yeah.
but
Well,
I think, yeah, go ahead.
that can be with time.
Right. Time definitely helps.
Time will help, and just a lot of the experience with you as a priest, experience with people, and kind of be forced, I guess. I don't know, to kind
Sure.
of like have a old schoolish.
Right.
I think yeah, the parish priest kind of is forced to take positions, not necessarily on who's elected. That
Right.
probably shouldn't be, but and just in general.
Yeah. Have a sense of decisiveness. I guess, in reflecting on that and this topic, I think that the one consolation is just the the kind of, in the midst of any kind of difficult circumstance, the reminder that we don't have to give up hope. Like we don't have to at any point say that this is the end, like this is the final word, especially if it's a negative word, and because I think like God is the God of surprises, and as we've talked about in the past, and yeah.
And we tend to have a negative. I mean, I know I do.
Oh
I have
yeah,
a negative
no question.
view on things. It's I know that I've suffered from that sort of negativity.
Yeah, no question.
So yeah, this is a good one, and
Yeah.
you and I, we could just go on forever.
But it was, yeah, I think that's a good thought. This is a good thought for the day, for sure.
Yeah. How long have we recorded?
This is 10, so it's been about, I think about a little over a half an hour.
I think that's
About
a
half an hour.
solid.
It's perfect.
Solid, perfect recording.
Yeah.
Well, everybody, we will be back, and actually tomorrow we will be recording with Justin Bingham.
Yep.
From Japan. We're gonna finish that episode. So you have that to look forward to. And anything else, Father, you'd like to say?
No, just it's good to be back, and look forward to chatting tomorrow.
Indeed. All right. Bye.
Bye-bye, everyone.